Hey guys, it's the Columbia Watch Society. Just wanted to do a quick review comparison of the two of the more famous watches out there, the Rolex Submariner No Date, the 14060 versus the 114060. The older version, the 5-digit serial over here on the left, it dates back to about a 1999. It's an A serial, whereas the one on the right, the 114060, is a random serial number, so we don't really know the year of it, but it's within the last couple of years when they came out with the newer case size. Major differences in the movement were the older version is using the 3000 movement, which I believe Rolex launched in 1990 to about 2000 is when they discontinued it. So this actually may be this A serial was late 99, early 2000. So this may be the last actual model that had that particular movement. The 3130 movement in the 114060. They moved on to that after the 3000. Major differences in my research is the 3130 uses a balance bridge and the 3000 movement does not. I don't know if that really makes a difference. Both watches are certainly capable of COSC specs. The watch on the right, the newer watch, is currently within a second or two a day, or within a second every couple of days, honestly. Whereas the older watch is no longer within the COSC standard, but that's more due to its lack of service over the last, I don't know the service history, but I can surely say that in the last 10 years it hasn't been serviced. So with a good servicing, I'm sure that would be back within that standard, but still now it's within 5 to 7 seconds a day. So it's more than ample for my needs. So it hadn't really presented a problem for me. Some of the differences obviously is the case, or the dial itself. Let's talk about the dial first. The newer version has the maxi dial with the larger hour and larger hour indicators. Even appears to have larger minute and hour hands as well. Perhaps maybe this just a little bit thicker with the lume applied. The older version, the more classic style, has the smaller indices, which I don't know that you would really notice it unless you're comparing them side by side. But side by side, it is a pretty significant difference. Particularly the lume on the newer version is a lot more significant at night. I think they just obviously applied the paint on a lot thicker on the larger indices, so that's something to keep in mind there. Another big difference in the dial, which is well documented on the watch forums online, is the 2-line of text down there, the Submariner 1,000 feet, 300 meters versus the 4-line when they added in there the superlative chronometer. I believe obviously the one on the older version has a little bit cleaner dial with the less text. So if you're a purist in that regard, then that's going to be the way you go. But again, the 4 lines don't really bother me, but just something to keep in mind that if you want the cleaner dial, you're going to have to go with a more vintage piece. The bezel action, both of them are pretty decent. I would say this one, again, keeping in mind this is a 20-year-old watch, it's still really good. I mean, it's very tight. It's aligned perfectly. There's a little bit of play in it, but not much, certainly considering the age. Obviously, Rolex bezels are fantastic, but you can see here, I mean, you hear that click, it's just beautiful. But again, it's perfect as you would expect. Again, who knows where it'll be in 20 years, but really can't say anything bad about the old bezel, but the new one obviously wins out in that regard. Big thing with bezel, the newer versions obviously have that ceramic versus the aluminum in the older model. The ceramic is a little bit shinier, a little bit blingier. You can kind of see it here. It definitely picks up a few more, reflects a little bit more light. The older version, again, this is almost a 20-year-old watch, I keep saying, but it's really not in bad shape. I don't have any major dings. It's got a few scratches in it, but nothing that I think really takes away from the appearance of the watch. The ceramic is supposedly scratch resistant, or doesn't show scratches. So again, obviously it looks perfect now. But again, for 20 years of wear, I don't think this thing looks too terrible. Again, another thing to worth mentioning with the bezel, I don't know if you can see them here, but let's see, I'll show you there, that the ceramic bezel picks up smudges almost as bad as the sapphire itself. So if the smudges bug you on the crystal of your watches, then be prepared to be wiping not only the sapphire but the bezel as well, because the newer model does pick up smudges on both surfaces, whereas the older one you really can't see any smudges on the aluminum bezel. Again, another cost potential, if you were to shatter the ceramic bezel, you're looking at a pretty expensive replacement, whereas the aluminum bezel can be popped on, I mean, pretty easily. You don't even really need a watchmaker necessarily to do that. It's not a very difficult fix, whereas you're looking at a pretty significant repair cost on the 114060. Again, so the bezel, obviously a big difference, and again, probably the biggest difference for me is just the case size. Both of them are 40mm watches, but if you're looking, obviously the newer model, to me, it looks a lot bigger, and obviously that comes down to just the thickness of the lugs. So the lugs are both still 20mm, but again, that thickness, it's pretty significant. It gives just a lot more heft to the watch itself. Even the crown guards, I don't know if you can see here, but the newer crown guards are at least twice as thick. So you're looking at it's just got a lot more of a wrist presence. So if you're a little bit borderline on the size and you got a smaller wrist, then that may be another reason you want to go with the older version versus the newer one. For me, I guess the kind of the verdict on which one I would recommend going with. Tech specs alone, I mean, obviously you're getting a newer watch. It's going to be a better watch. You obviously are not in need of service history, or not in need of service if you're buying a newer piece, whereas this one, most of these examples you're going to find online, you're looking at, or you're going to have to buy it. You got to buy it pre-owned because they obviously aren't making them anymore. But you're looking at probably a service cost. You got to factor that in, versus these should be good to go for 5 or 10 years. So that's something to consider. And really the big kicker for me though was price. So price, you're looking at, I don't know, we're in the 5,000 to 5,500 range for the 5-digit models, and you're looking maybe 6,500 on the used market for the random serial number, the ceramic bezel. So basically $1,000 difference, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but it's a relatively small percentage of the cost of the watch. So the cost of entry is relatively similar, and you're getting, obviously a more modern watch, a better movement, or a slightly better movement, but a watch that won't be needing servicing anytime soon. But the kicker for me is just the bracelet. The bracelet on, if you can hear this, and this is actually it may not even be the original bracelet. It's a 93150 bracelet, so a 90-something bracelet, but hollow end links, and it's a really comfortable bracelet. It's really light, but it's definitely has a rattle to it, where you don't have that on this. Just a lot more solidly constructed bracelet. And perhaps the biggest thing is just the glide lock. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I'm sure you are if you're watching this video, but the ability to change the size of the sub bracelet on the newer one is so convenient. And obviously the micro adjustments on the older model, you're gonna need at least a tool to do that. So that's something to consider on a hot day. If your wrist swells, it's nice to be able to knock it up a little size with very little effort. So something to consider. Again, you may be able to find a great deal on an older model, but in my research, the prices are relatively similar, and I think you're probably getting a little bit better watch if you go with the newer model, just for a relatively small amount more money. Again, if you're a purist and you need the two-line dial, then really the only way you can go is with the older model. Or if another thing to point out is these the newer models, the random serial number, so you don't know the year. So if you're looking for an heirloom that needs to need a birth year or something like that, then obviously you're gonna have to go with the older model. But again, side by side, both are just fantastic watches. But for the money, I think you're probably gonna be a little bit better off, and you'll probably be secure for a little bit longer without needing any servicing. Whereas on this one, you may need a little bit more. Just like dealing with any vintage-ish piece, you might be a little bit more maintenance than you're looking at on a newer model. But comment on the video if you have any questions or any comments. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out, Cola Watch, COLAWATCH.com, and on Instagram at The Columbia Watch Society. Thanks for watching, and we'd love to hear from you guys.